Let's come back home, and Australia's new Foreign Affairs Minister Bob Carr has spoken to the US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton. They discussed elections in PNG, progress in Burma and, of course, developments in Afghanistan. And the new Foreign Minister Bob Carr joins us now from Parliament. Bob, good morning.
Good morning, Michael.
Now, firstly, I should start calling you Minister because not too recently you were a panellist on our Party Line segment, so I congratulate you on your promotion from that job to Foreign Minister.
Thank you. It can lead anywhere. Working for the ABC can lead anywhere. You ought to keep thinking about that.
Oh, there's hope for me yet. Now, let's get down to some serious issues. Of course, we're reporting this morning one of your first phone calls as Foreign Minister was to Hillary Clinton. Did the issue of Syria come up and options for just how the West should tackle this issue?
No, we spoke about the region. We spoke about the elections in Papua New Guinea, and she was cautiously pleased with the suggestion out of New Guinea that they will adhere to that 5-year election cycle. In other words, there will be elections as expected by the middle of the year, with the writs returned on August 6. And she recognises Australia's lead role in the South Pacific, although she points with pride to the fact that America is spending more there and doing more there than ever before.
But just before we move on, it may not have come up in the conversation, but of course the international community is transfixed on the situation in Syria. What options do you believe the West should now explore, given that there are obvious roadblocks in the United Nations with Russia and China? There's reluctance, understandable reluctance to send in military forces. What are the options facing the West here?
Well, there aren't many options. We all continue to call for the standing down of President Assad and his regime. We apply sanctions. We encourage the United Nations and the Arab League to send in observers. We want the Red Cross to be there as well. We build unity and attempt to put pressure on those powers who are blocking in the Security Council what the rest of us think is the necessary action. I spoke the day I was designated as Foreign Minister with the British Foreign Secretary William Hague about these matters, and he has continued, as has Secretary Clinton, to press these very, very eloquently in the United Nations. Australia, I'm proud to say, was there early in the piece among the first to call for President Assad to step down.
You discussed Afghanistan with Hillary Clinton. As you know, there's renewed debate in policy circles in Washington about a potentially earlier than scheduled drawdown of American troops. Is that a feasible option?
This will be discussed with all those who are part of the assistance force in Chicago in a month or so. The Americans are committed to a transition, as we are, by 2014. That would mean, ideally, after that date, having a mentoring and a training and an assistance role with a lot of foreign aid to protect the government in Afghanistan and to protect the people. That continues to be our focus. There are discussions between us and the Americans about the nature of that transition and the level of support required to render the government viable beyond that date.
Secretary Clinton used the opportunity in that phone call, Mr Carr, to invite you to Washington. Have you got plans to go to visit Australia's great ally?
Yes, she nominated the date, April 24, which is convenient to us, and I look forward to that meeting. The relationship with America is the cornerstone of Australian security, and the relationship encompasses cooperation on every front. If you take a target like expanding democracy in Burma, I congratulated Secretary Clinton on her lead role there. Kevin Rudd was the first foreign minister to get into Burma, to get a visa to get into Burma just as it was opening up. And our friends in Indonesia played an extraordinarily creative role. In fact, Secretary of State Clinton spent some time talking to me last night about how impressed she was by the lead role of the Indonesian president in going to Burma and coaxing a military dictatorship there to make the sort of transition to robust democracy that, of course, Indonesia is able to boast.
You, of course, have pretty good contacts in the United States, care of your participation in forums like the US-Australia Leadership Dialogue and the like. You have known Hillary Clinton, for instance, for many years. How much easier will that make it for you as Foreign Minister to prosecute Australia's case, put Australia's arguments to Washington?
I think Americans are pretty comfortable with me because they've known me in those fora. with Secretary of State Clinton. We're able to reminisce about a beautiful day in Sydney, on Sydney Harbour in 1996 when she and her husband were there. I gave a speech of welcome. We're able to reminisce about the Sydney Olympics when Chelsea, her daughter, was in Sydney, and I recall chatting with her about her mother's performance in the New York Senate race. I remember September 2003, on the steps of the Sydney Opera House, the day of the women's triathlon in Sydney Harbour and around Sydney streets, talking to Chelsea about how her mother had performed debating Republican Congressman Lazio, and how impressed I had been by her mother's performance. So we had a good laugh about that. The Secretary of State said, and it won't surprise you, I've been in elections, I've won some, I've lost some.
Now, just finally, before we go, Mr Carr, turning to a domestic issue, as you're probably aware, the Senate has passed legislation essentially clearing the way for a nuclear waste dump in the Northern Territory. Of course, you've been a very strong proponent of nuclear power. As Foreign Minister, will you be arguing the case with even greater weight, with even greater force for Australia to adopt nuclear power?
No, I won't. I mean, that's not my role. It's the role of my ministerial colleague, Minister Ferguson. I thought that was a very sound decision, as did the coalition, as well as my Labor colleagues in the Senate yesterday. We've got to have it, and that's to take the sort of routine low-level nuclear waste that's accumulated in hospitals and elsewhere. And we've got to be big enough as a country to locate a repository for that sort of material.
Do you still believe nuclear power is a feasible option for Australia?
I think Japan has set that back. I think Japan has set it back because of the impact it's had on insurance and cost. But we've got to keep all options there. I mean, that's the spirit of the government green paper on energy. Keep the full suite of options there for our future. The fact is, some of the renewables are taking off more slowly than I, as a believer in climate change, would have liked, and we've got to continue to observe what's happening with the development of fourth generation nuclear. That's no big deal. It's simply a matter of keeping an open mind.
OK, Bob Carr, thank you for your time. Of course, the door's always open here on ABC News Breakfast.
I'll be in that door, Michael.